Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, we are catching up with Harry Wilbur Cook, who joined us just about 2 weeks ago, in fact, talking entrepreneurship. And he is an entrepreneur. He's also a leading business and executive coach. And today we're talking around an article that he wrote in Biz Community. It's never about the money until there isn't any. Business owners often prioritizing financial security for their business over their own financial needs. Good afternoon to you, Harry. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Bridget. Very well, and yourself?
I'm fantastic. Let's talk about this particular article, the motivation for writing this opinion on Biz Community.
Yeah, I think it really comes maybe from a point of, frustration, but then also from a point of understanding where business owners come from. And I think, the last few years haven't been easy necessarily in business. And whilst the perception is that business owners are always doing everybody else in, the reality is that's so far from the truth, it's just not funny. And I often hear people saying things to me like, but Harry, it's not just about the money. And I say, of course it's not. There's a lot more to life than money. But when there isn't money, then money becomes the only thing. And often it's both the biggest frustration business owners have, but also the biggest solution to solving their problems. And therefore there needs to be a bit of a conversation around it, but more important to focus on it.
You say that there needs to be an understanding between rich and wealth, particularly when we talk about entrepreneurs and this journey.
Well, absolutely. So rich is the accumulation of money. So, we can go about doing that. Sadly, even entrepreneurs that get to that point find they're not wealthy because they're not wealthy of the relationships that they've neglected, or they're not wealthy in the sense of health because they've neglected that and paid too high a price. So we need to try and include all of these elements around wealth so that one day if I have made money, I can actually enjoy it, number one, but also have the strength and resilience to use it. And I think it starts with prioritizing a concept that I call Mrs. Roy.
Okay.
There's two elements to a business owner. And when it's a corporate business entity, it's removed from the same person. So in a corporate entity, I could be the CEO of the biggest company in the world, but I get paid and remunerated a market-related salary, that's MRS, the Mrs. part, for the job that I do. And if I do a better job, I get bonuses or shares or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
If I am an investor in that same corporate that the CEO runs for me, I am the shareholder, and therefore I must get the ROI, the return on investment. And in a corporate, that's normally split from each other, largely at least. In a private business, I am both management and shareholder. So I need to get paid a market-related salary for the work that I'm doing, because I'm going to work every day building a business, doing what's necessary. And I should be returning a return on investment for the money I've put in, the risk I've taken, things like that. And that often doesn't happen because we live out the till almost. If we're having a great month, we do well. If we're not having great months, everybody else makes money and we don't. And we need to start looking at those different elements of our business as a wealth creator.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. And what you're saying, I don't even have a business of my own. So where is the challenge then, I guess, for entrepreneurs and for those starting out in business? Where is the challenge in getting them to this part where they are able, to tap in or to enjoy the fruits of their labor by way of Mrs. Roy?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand that, yes, maybe if you're starting out a business today, you're not going to be there in month 1 or month 2. You're going to have to build to that. But you have to understand that you have wealth to add. And I think a lot of the frustration in business today is the effort I'm putting in versus the return I'm getting out is in imbalance. So I'm paying my suppliers, I'm keeping the bank happy, I'm paying them interest, I'm paying the staff. And every 25th of the month when I must pay salaries, I'm stressing because where's it going to come from? Yet all my effort gets everybody else paid and not enough for me. So I have to define what am I worth? What am I working towards? And budget to pay myself the salary as soon as the business can allow. and I need to budget to make profit. Now, that's often an interesting one because people say, oh, no, but Harry, I don't want to make too much money, because then I must pay tax. Yes, that's a good thing. I'd much rather have a tax problem than an income problem. So we have to budget to make profit and then build the business accordingly. And fortunately for us as humans, if we have to do something, we generally will. If I have to pay my installments at the end of the month, I normally try and make a plan that there's money for the debit orders to go. Okay, but if I don't have to pay myself and I can be patient and 1 month pay and 1 month skip and 1 month pay late, well, then I won't, because I don't have to do it consistently. So prioritize yourself, understand what you're worth, and build both the salary and the profit into the business. Then you go about saying, okay, now what does the business need to do, and what I and the team need to do in the business to make sure that that happens.
I mean, as you were talking, Harry, I'm wondering, because now my guests often merge into one on my brain. But we were having a conversation, I think last week, with a guest who highlighted that, in fact, the measure of a good, healthy business that is being built is its ability to, on the one hand, budget and finance, and on the other hand, market itself. And he touched on some of the elements that you are touching on as well. If you cannot get to a point where you are able to sustain yourself as one of the employees of your business, then that is a sign that something is not right or the business is not healthy.
Absolutely. So that person was, in fact, me. Now you've made the right link. We had that conversation last week, which is good. And yes, those are the challenges. But if we look at that, and we often hear things like, well, but at least my business is giving me time or flexibility. I can go watch my daughter play hockey. Well, at what expense? Or I've got flexibility, and that's okay. But I'm not paying myself what I'm worth. So it's the ability to try and put all these ingredients into a melting pot and then get them to actually work. Now, the reality around, because the other thing that we've become obsessed about as a society is work-life balance. And, from day one, I'm building a business, yet I want to have work-life balance at the same time. Well, that's an absolute fallacy. It doesn't exist. Because if we did an exercise with you or the listeners and said, okay, what are all the things I must do every day? I must get so much sleep. I must commute. I must do hygiene. I must prepare food. I must do some learning and health and fitness. We run out of hours before we get to everything we should be doing. Okay, so I have to buy back balance with money. Again, it comes back to money. That's why it's important. Because in a business, I buy back time through putting systems into play, through putting the right staff into play, through getting the right people, doing the right things at the right time. And that buys me back time to then do more of that and then focus on the other elements of my life and make sure that I can schedule these things. Not all necessarily in a 24-hour space, but we like to budget in quarters. So over the space of a quarter, I might have a really busy February because it's end of financial year and I'm stressing to get budgets done for the new year. So I'm out of balance with, say, for example, my family this month.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's a long weekend coming up in March that I can take, and in fact, Easter weekend thereafter. So I can counterbalance away from an overexerted business focus to a counterbalance more in favor of my family at that stage, because I'm looking at a holistic view of the kind of quarter.
That makes perfect sense to me. We thought we would ask an entrepreneur who's been part of the family business for 11 years now as its MD, helping build a much recognized brand within the South Africa motoring and tire industry, Super Tires, Dean Horn, who also happens to be a friend and acquaintance of Harry Wilbur Cook, to join the conversation today. Sometimes maybe our listeners find it easier hearing from the lips of entrepreneurs, people who have journeyed and have gone through the ups and downs of building a business. They say it's easier to take advice maybe from people who you've seen being bruised. How are you doing, Dean?
Bridget, I'm doing very well. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time. Dean Horn is the CEO of Super Tires. A lot of people recognize the brand indeed. Didn't realize it's been around for just under 3 decades now.
It's actually 5 decades. We're 52 years old.
Really?
Family business started by my dad back in 1971.
Oh, wowza. Okay, my apologies. I got the right, the wrong timestamp there. Geez, 5 decades of business. I can imagine when your dad talks about those earlier days, those earlier days of entrepreneurship, some of the challenges and the hurdles that he probably had to jump over just to get the business going.
Bridget, is a fascinating story. I know in 1971, my dad was in 20,000 Rand debt, and I actually did the maths on it. It works out to about 1.8 million Rand debt in today's money when he started the business. So certainly he went through millions of trials and tribulations trying to get a business started. But we've had our own challenges in more recent times, with economies being tough and the challenges of today and so forth. And so we've been on a journey probably the last 10 years of really just rediscovering and getting our business on track and so forth. And it has been lots of trials and tribulations once again, but very confident that we've now got things really nicely on track.
Absolutely. Let's just, maybe share a little bit of the experiences as told to you and also the lessons that you've learned as now the new CEO of Super Tires. In terms of starting a business, you say your dad was in 20,000+ Rand debt when he started the business. And I find a lot of people that we talk to who are entrepreneurs talk about, they started because they were feeling uncomfortable or edgy wherever they were now. And for all kinds of reasons, ownership of time, et cetera, wanted to start their own thing. Or sometimes people really start on the back footing. They start off from the perspective of being bankrupt, desperate, needing to do something different and make a rather great success out of it. So I guess my thing is never be afraid to start if you think you have a good enough idea and a great plan.
Yeah, I think so, Bridget. Strangely enough, the business is older than me, so my dad always referred to it as his first child. And so, yeah, my recollection of those early years of the business is not that clear. I mean, by the time I was sort of 20 and sort of started to understand what the world was about and so forth, he would tell me a little bit about it. We're very different characters, myself and my dad. He honestly, I just have the utmost respect for him. He was somebody that just knew how to do things from the seat of his pants. He just was very instinctual about how to make things work and happen and so forth. Very fortunately, he obviously could then afford to educate me. And I sort of had a very different approach. So I did battle, honestly, in the sort of mentorship with my dad through no fault of his own. He had a standard 6 education and so forth. And so, there was a bit of a gap, a bit of a lull within the history of Super Tires, honestly, until I started my coaching journey, and that's where I met Harry.
Yeah.
And really just sort of found my own confidence and found my own abilities within business to get it started. But yeah, certainly I do remember many, many stories around the dining room table back in those days about the real challenges and my mom balancing tires, pushing a pram and, all of the difficulties and struggles that they had to go through many, many years ago.
I just got a visual of your mom.
No, she worked hard. That's one thing I can say about both of my parents, that they were certainly, there's no such thing as shortcuts to business. It's certainly lots of hard work involved.
Absolutely. Harry, perhaps let's pick up on exactly what Dean said, is that there is no shortcut to business. And in fact, you say, in your piece that one has got to create the space and time for brainstorming and planning.
Well, yeah, I think so. There's a double-edged sword to that comment, because part of business is you need time to think. You need time to reflect. You need time to plan. Well, when you're looking from the outside and somebody's sitting at their desk or staring out the window, it doesn't look like work, but it's quite important work to do. But that element around the shortcut to success, I had a new graduate sitting with me the other day, and he said, he's not quite sure where he wants to go in life, but one thing is clear is he's looked at his parents working hard. and he's listened to the professors at university, and one thing's for certain, he's definitely not going to work hard. He's rather going to work smart. And I said, well, good luck with that theory, because, again, that doesn't exist anywhere in the world. There is no biography or autobiography you can read of anybody remotely successful that doesn't start with, it took hard work upfront. Once you've put in the hard yards, once you've put in the effort, you then earn the right to get it to work easier. You leverage a little bit, you scale a little bit, and then it starts to become smarter work, absolutely, because you can't sustain that forever. But I think let's not kid ourselves. Business and life, for that matter, is hard, takes effort, and it needs to be put in upfront before you get the benefits and the spoils.
Dean, oftentimes when people look at, generations that have taken over family businesses, there's this fallacy that it came easy. It was built by somebody, and all you did was take the reins. But I can imagine that that's probably the furthest thing from the truth for a whole host of reasons.
100%, Bridget. Over a period of 5 decades, a hell of a lot changes. And when I took over the reins of the business, there was, as I mentioned earlier, there was a lull between my dad's sort of active leadership in the company and the time when I had really grown to the state where I could properly take over. And so, we found ourselves in very difficult waters at the time when we sort of started our journey. And just to touch on what Harry said there about deserving the situation or deserving the rewards that come later. When I started this journey with coaching, I remember how overwhelmed I felt. I actually came home to my wife after our first session, and I said to her, I feel like I'm standing at the foot of Mount Everest, barefoot and naked. And she said to me on the day, put one foot in front of the other, and that's pretty much what I've done. And, we've come so far along the journey now that those rewards, work balance for me, work-life balance for me. I play tennis twice a week. I play golf twice a week.
With what time?
I don't want to give away all my secrets here, but I'm going to be called lazy. But certainly, there were lots of tears and tribulations and blood, sweat and tears that went into structuring the business in such a way that it can afford me the time. I must tell you today that Monday mornings, I don't have that pang of there's work today. It's actually quite a pleasure. I look forward to getting into the week. And over this journey that we've had with coaching, I literally have turned the business into something that operates without me. I remain in the business because I enjoy it and I'm passionate about it. And we've just created such a wonderful culture that it's really honestly become a great place to work. And so, but lots of blood, sweat and tear along the ways before we managed to get to the place where literally the business does run without me.
I love everything that I hear you say, and it sort of sparks yet another conversation that I had last year with the CEO of Student Village, and he also got to a point, to Harry's sort of point around focus and taking time to reflect and taking time to sit with the questions of where do we go, what are we doing, all that necessary head thinking space that must happen. He's carved out Tuesdays. And for him, it started out as an experiment to see whether or not he's built an organization that is able to function without him. And so he became absent on Tuesdays. And since then, it's now been a culture within his sort of leadership where his Tuesdays are exactly that. He chooses to do the things that develop and sustain and build and grow the business outside of being in the business. So whether it be meetings or time to reflect and relax on the golf course or following up on connections, all those things that ordinarily wouldn't get done on a 9-to-5 day because you focus on the operations. He now does that on Tuesdays. And similarly to you, he says he derives pleasure in knowing that his staff does not even email him a single thing on a Tuesday, and his business is perfectly fine without him.
Yeah, Bridget, I think one of the big philosophies of Action Coach is to work on your business, not in your business. And that was foreign to me when we started the journey. I sort of was so caught up and so busy with the daily daily deeds that need to be done within the business, that there was literally zero time available to really start taking a strategic approach towards the business. I used to feel so guilty sitting at my office, and Harry nailed it when he said daydreaming. I'd literally sit there and sort of catch myself 10 minutes later going, there's work to be done. Why am I sitting here thinking about the business? I now, from 8 to 9 every morning, will have a cup of coffee, sit on my stoop, and literally just crash things around in my own mind and so forth. And then from there, obviously set up meetings with the team and different departments and so forth to see what the appetite is to drive different sort of projects forward and so forth. But I spend an immense amount of time now just thinking about on the business, nothing to do with in the business. And to be honest, I absolutely love being in that space where I don't have a day-to-day job that needs to take place. Of course, you have to get the right people within the business that can take care of all of those things at the right level for you. But certainly, to now be in a position where I only work strategically on the business has had a huge impact on the results of the business. And of course, my own time as well.
Absolutely. Harry, is it possible at the beginning stages, those stages of the grit and the grind, is it possible to foster that kind of culture, even if it's at a minimal level where you are working, for the business, but not necessarily in the business?
Absolutely. And I think the reality of us as humans is if we schedule something, it generally happens. We have a meeting or we have an appointment or we must fetch our child at a certain time from school. If it's scheduled, we generally do it. If it's not scheduled, we generally don't. Well, we don't schedule gym necessarily. We don't schedule date night with the missus. We don't schedule, remember everybody, this week's Valentine's Day. And we don't schedule time to think. So one of the first things to do, and looping back to where we started the conversation with wealth, is put into your diary a wealth hour. Now, whether that's a Monday night for you or a Tuesday morning or a Friday midday, it doesn't matter. 1 hour a week that there's nothing that gets put in that slot. And unless the building's burning consistently at that hour for that week, you've just got space to think about wealth in general, my wealth of my health, my relationships, my business, whether I'm doing some research, whether I'm doing some reading, whether I'm taking stock of my financial position, doesn't matter what you do with it. It's the regularity of having that hour, because then I can go, well, I'm 24/7 busy the whole week, but I can look forward to my hour, and that's my hour to break away. Now, the trick with that hour is preferably not to do it at work and behind your desk, because it's the same thinking, it's the same environment, it's the same emergencies, it's the same interruptions. Go somewhere where you break the cycle. And you can, if need be, stare out the window. Look at something that you like and appreciate. If you like the beach, go to the beach. If you like the mountains, go to the mountains. Do something that kind of feeds your soul almost and forces you that time to think and reflect. And then you will build, because any success becomes a game that you play. The more you play the game, the better you get at it. The more you understand the rules, the more you win, the more you win, the more you enjoy the game. So you can start anywhere. And I think, Dean was actually saying to me the other day, there's all this fluffy stuff that is good theory to build a business with. Culture, vision, purpose. Well, I haven't got time for that. I'm trying to make money. And yet when one actually does some of that stuff and it takes the thinking, then the results can be quite profound. So maybe Dean can add a little bit to see how that fluffy stuff has actually been quite instrumental in where they are today.
And in fact, Dean, I'm going to leave you with, the last words on that fluffy stuff.
I know Harry takes offense when I call it the fluffy. To be honest, I call it the fluffy nonsense. But I know, when we started our journey, there were other things that we needed to fix in our business first. And that was sort of 3 years of getting systems right and starting to make some money and so forth. And eventually, begrudgingly, I got on board and said, okay, well, let's look at the vision and values and the culture within the company and so forth. And I actually said to Harry the other day, I said, Harry, if somebody asks me today what the most important thing is in business, I would say without a doubt culture. You know, the changes that we've made in our business, you know, we have a phrase for our culture drive, and that's called asibambisan, which means let's carry each other. And it truly did start, you know, our vision is to create raving fans with every life we touch. And it started off by us understanding that we need to make our staff raving fans of our business before we can expect our staff to make our customers or our suppliers or whoever it might be raving fans of our business as well. And certainly, you know, it's just been the most rewarding thing I've ever done in business to really focus on it. We didn't have a culture before, you know, the culture just sort of manifested itself. And we've really driven our values hard and looked after our people and done wonderful things, had wonderful initiatives that we are very disciplined about, and we make sure that those things are always happening. Small things, Bridget, you know, one example is birthday burgers. Every time there's a birthday in the company, I will personally phone the person and wish them a happy birthday, and their manager will get them a burger. It's tiny little things that we do, but it's an accumulation and a consistency of those things that's created this culture. And I did a talk the other day, and it's amazing to see that as our Google ratings have increased, our bottom line has almost increased on exactly the same trajectory from that. And we're very proud of our Google ratings. And that doesn't come from me. I don't serve any customers, Bridget. Yeah. It's our staff that have really put that passion into the business that have made a huge difference.
I love it. Gentlemen, and I'm all for the fluffy nonsense stuff. Dean Horn, on the 26th of February is my birthday. I shall be expecting a birthday burger. Gentlemen, thank you very much for the time. That was Dean Horn, CEO of Super Tires, and of course, Harry Wilby Cook, who is an entrepreneur and a leading business and executive coach. That article is out on Biz Community. Let's wrap it there.